Andy, man, thanks so much for coming back on here today. I was looking back. I think this is your seventh appearance on the show. So you're definitely up near the top. For anybody that's been living under a rock for like the last 15, 20 years, would you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's an honor that I've been on this many times. So thank you. But Andy McCloy, owner of BCI Sport Performance and Fitness in Madison, Alabama. We've been in business for the past 25 years. We work with a wide range of athletes from 7 years old all the way to professional levels. And we work with adults that are around 35 to 65, primarily using a small group training model. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a friend, and I am completely obsessed with all things strength and conditioning and the business of sport performance and fitness.
I love it, man. Damn, that was very succinct.
Yeah, that was
You've dialed that in over the years, my guy. That's good.
That was pretty tight.
That's good. Well, dude, talk to me. What's new in your neck of the woods? We caught up a little bit before the show, but for somebody that hasn't heard from you in a year or two, what's new, man?
Yeah, well, I mean, on the personal side, like I was sharing with you, my youngest daughter is entering middle school, and so we've got the fun associated with that, which is unique challenges. Even though I've been a father for more years of my life than not, with my oldest being 30 years old, I actually got full custody of her when she was 13. So the entrance into middle school, I didn't experience as a full-time parent because she wasn't living under my roof at that time. So
sure.
That's been awesome. Business is great. We're continuing to grow. We're actually in a really cool position now that in order to keep growing, we've got to onboard another full-time staff member. So we've got, our average coach has been with us, I guess, now about 7 years. So we're elevating some people more into like management and trying to figure out how to fill in that next layer of the org chart so we can continue to grow and make an impact in this area.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, we've got a ton of ground to cover, and we talked about this before the show, and Andy and I are big on the audio texts. So we audio text a lot. And one of the things that I mentioned to you that I would love to talk about here today is culture. And we talked about this before the show, but I think a lot of people struggle to define it, put their finger on what it is. So I would love to hear from you. Let's just start there. How would you describe it? And maybe if you were starting a gym from scratch, how would you go about building a solid gym culture?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can start out from scratch and build a culture. I think it kind of forms itself around what you create over time. Mm-hmm. So there's a great quote by Peter Drucker that is culture eats strategy for breakfast or something like that. And I only highlight that because I think it is that important. And I think a good culture can help you shadow and hide a lot of weaknesses as a gym owner and a business owner in general, if you have a good culture. I think for the first decade, our culture was built around being really good at the job. It was built around creating results for our clients and making a little bit of noise about that. And I don't mean through social media or digital marketing. It was mean the word travels, when you do a good job by your clients. So if I was trying to create a good culture, that's the first thing that I would look at. It's I would tell somebody to slow down and let it happen organically instead of trying to create a thing, right?
Yep.
And if there's two things that I think our culture is built around now, it's invest in the humans that work for you. Kind of back to Drucker, he had he wrote a bunch of management books, I think in the 50s, 60s maybe. But his big thing was about the rise of the knowledge worker and the importance to invest in staff, how important it is not to remove people's autonomy. And that's one of the things that we try to really facilitate is the growth of each staff member, highlight their strengths, but also fill the gaps with the areas where they can be better by giving them opportunities to plug into continuing education. And then the second part, I would say, is the results that we create for clients, meeting clients where they are and creating results. And I'm not so sure, I think when people say results, they attribute that to before and after pictures or scholarships. And we've certainly done a lot of that. But I think it's about just making people better versions of themselves. And I know that may sound very vague and altruistic, but that is what we try to do. Not every kid's going to get a scholarship. Not every person is going to lose the weight that they want to. But if we can make their life better by way of their relationship with us in the facility, that enhances the quality of culture that you have inside your gym.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think of it as just you're investing in other people. Right? Investing in other humans. And kind of the way I've always thought about it is there's this trickle down effect, right? And I think there's a lot of people that talk about culture that don't necessarily exude it, right? From the top down. But I think it was probably you or Luka that first kind of put me in this mindset of, look, when you're exuding what you want your culture to be like, when you're then doing that with your staff, right, and investing in them, then ultimately those are the times when your gym culture is the best, right? Because it kind of starts with you. It starts with your interactions and your relationships with your employees. And then it just tends to trickle down. Because if you're teaching them, if you're investing time and energy in them, if you're making them better, then they want to carry that over and they're going to take that forward with your clients and athletes, right?
Yeah. I think the nature of the world that we're in now, where like we're on podcasts and social media, like there's this performative aspect of everything that I think is a little inauthentic. So
Yes.
I think a lot of people are like looking for a formula of how to like build a culture, and people talk about culture without really knowing what it is or how to define it. And I just think that's why it's so important to like know who you are, know what your strengths are, and double down on those. Because if like you said, from the top down, if those are the things you stand for and you recruit and hire around that, that's going to bleed into the clientele and it becomes your culture. And essentially your clientele base is going to define that for you over time, I think. And people like to stand in front of mics and cameras now, and everybody's an expert, right? And culture is one of those. It's kind of a vague topic. So you can like say something in a really fast way and put it on Instagram and it spreads and it becomes a meme. But in my experience, it's kind of a moving target. Like culture shifts and changes based on you and your role in the business. And I know our culture is different now than it used to be because, I mean, for example, one thing like our client avatar, we used to be known for football. In fact, I think that if you were to ask most people what they know me for as a coach, it was probably working with football athletes.
Yep.
We still train football athletes, but now we've got a lot of high-end basketball and baseball, and that's really because of my staff's interest. And just what we've come to attract is I've kind of moved myself up on the org chart. So I think culture is just it's a moving target. You've got an opportunity to shape shift it based on staff competence. What I don't think it is like the words you put on your wall, the colors that you use. I think a lot of people try to simplify it down to that. And while the words you put on your wall may be indicative of your culture, I would suggest that sometimes they're just words on a wall and may not be.
Yeah. No, I mean, you kind of beat me to the punch here because I was going to ask you about how a gym's culture can evolve over time. And it makes me think a little bit about iFast, right? Because for so many years, it's Bill and I, right? Top of the org chart. And we have like these really world-class high-level coaches, and that kind of trickles down. So we're known for the education and the training philosophy and all that. But then when we kind of pivoted and now it's more an independent contractor setup, it's a lot different, right? Yeah. Now I would still say we have good culture, but it is different, right? Because now everybody's kind of doing their own thing. We've got people that specialize with athletes. We've got people that specialize with 60 and 70-year-old Gen Pop clients. We have the people that just train, the stay-at-home moms or the busy moms, 40 to 50 for physique stuff. But again, this is like you said, like the philosophy, or excuse me, the culture can absolutely change over time. And part of that is the people you're surrounded with, right? And I think sometimes it's a conscious decision, like, hey, I want to change the culture. And then there's other times where either out of necessity or just change in your business and your approach, the culture can shift as well. It's really interesting to think about it like that.
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, I think the culture does arise more organically, even when it changes. I think, and again, I'm open to being wrong on this, but I think if somebody's setting out to change their culture, that's indicative of something not being great to begin with. Or like big changes inside of it, like you just explained. You guys went from a very different model with a very different avatar, with a very different staff, to now something totally different. And I don't think that, you said, like, I'm going to attract people that want to work with 70-year-olds and elite basketball players. That's what kind of filled the room and has now become kind of the new culture. Because when I think of iFast, I still think of you and Bill, the assessments, the thoroughness of like integrating like physical therapy practices with high performance. And I'm sure all of that is still true, but like the people that are coming into your building right now may not even recognize that because it looks different and a totally different staff. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that was a conscious decision on my part was, when I was bringing people in, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Like not just the culture as far as like the execution of the end product, right? So not just the training side of it, but just like the human quality of it. Because when I started interviewing all these people, and I mean, look, dude, it took me a while. I thought as soon as we were going to go to this model, like, yo, like they've got a great space to train out of. It's affordable. You don't have the risk of, you know, signing your name on a mortgage, on a lease, whatever. You don't have all this overhead that you and I know is associated with being a business owner. And it took me a long time, dude. And it took me a long time, partially because I probably could have done a better job marketing it, but I was really stubborn in who I let get those keys and work out of our gym. Because I think the biggest litmus test for me was that, hey man, all these people need to be serious, right? Like they need to be serious about their craft. They need to be serious about their results. And it really wasn't until probably this year where I felt like, yo, we're in like a really solid, stable place.
Yeah.
Because again, for me, it had to be the right people, right? The people drove it. And now the culture is good because we have good people, if that makes sense.
Totally. I mean, it's, you know, find the right people, put them in the right seat. That's one of those sayings that you always hear. And I think in pursuit of finding the right people, you have to have some clear defined values. And like, that's what I heard you say is like, you kind of know the right type of person you're looking for.
Yep.
And I think any mistake that I've ever made in hiring, it was like trying to hire somebody too fast that wasn't a clear reflection of those values, or at one point in time, me not being clear enough on those values to begin with, or what they look like in action. So you kind of take somebody that you think fits a part of it, only to realize later, like, oh, wait a minute, they're not really congruent with what I stand for. And where we're at now, it's something that we're more ruthless about than ever. It's like, how do we find somebody that walks and talks, and I don't mean literally, I mean figuratively, like the staff members that we have now that do such a great job. And it's ironic. It's one of those things that I think most gym owners overlook when they first start their business. Because like everybody knows, at least if they've ever read a business book, that they need to have values for their business. But I rarely meet gym owners that are, you know, first couple of years in, or shoot, even some 5 to 10 years in, that can tell you what that looks like in action for a staff member, or even like what it doesn't look like. What are contraindicated behaviors associated with those values?
Well, it's not something I thought about, right? Like you talk about filling in an org chart. And so when I think about it as when you open a business, right, it's you and it's the people you train, right? There is no gap, right? It's like a 1-to-1 ratio, right? But the more people you have, right, the more employees, the higher that org chart gets, the bigger the divide between you and the everyday person that walks in your gym. And so that's where it's like, man, you got to have that congruency and you got to make sure that those are the right hires. And it sounds like for you, you've done a great job of that, right? If your average person is there 7+ years already, like that makes it sound like you've done some really good, like a really effective job of finding people that are congruent with the values and the culture that you want to build.
I think we've done a good job, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that I've made way more bad hires than good hires. You know, I think when you are, one of the big lessons I've learned really this year is that being reactive to your hiring puts you in a bad position.
Yes.
I would advise somebody else to be very proactive in their hiring, treat their hiring process like marketing, always be marketing, always be looking. But I think at times you can get comfortable and not do that. And that was certainly my experience. So, you know, 18 months ago, we lost a longtime staff member, and it was kind of abrupt, like how it happened. And we needed to fill people. So we did what we did. Like you throw some ads out, you start hiring people. That also exposed some other holes. Like we needed our onboarding and our internship process to be a little bit better. So we're kind of like fixing that as we go. And then, you know, they either quit or we let them go because we find out 3 to 6 months into the job, like, well, they're not really at standard, you know? So I would say in my lifetime, I've made way more bad hires than good hires. But the ones that stick, or the ones that have stuck, I should say, are like the example now of what we're looking for, right? And they are a real reflection of the values that I believe are most important for BCI right now.
Yeah, I love it. Bro, this reminds me, when I first moved to Indianapolis, there was a guy, when I was in Fort Wayne, I first met him. His name was Craig Rasmussen. I don't know if you ever met him. He worked for Alan Cosgrove. Yeah. So he's been in the fitness space for a really long time. And so shout out to Craig if he hears this, because just an awesome dude, right? Like, so I was in Fort Wayne doing these powerlifting seminars. This is when I was writing for T Nation and all that. And I remember Craig came up and I'm like, man, this is just like the nicest human being, right? obviously worked out. We love talking shop, love talking about training. And so I can't remember the exact year, but he's like, hey, my wife and I are looking to move back to California. And I'm like, hey, I got a guy there, Alan Cosgrove. You should, connect with him. And so I put him in touch. I say, Alan, I don't know where you're at, if you're hiring, whatever, but you should really talk to this guy. I think he's great. And so, one thing leads to another. Next thing I know, Craig's like, dude, thank you so much. Alan hired me. So now I'm typing Alan. I'm like, Alan, dude, thank you so much, man. He must have filled a great spot for you. He's like, Mike, this guy was so good. I wasn't even hiring. I made a job for him. It's just to your point, right? Yeah. Like you're always thinking about the next hire, right? Or always marketing. He might not have been marketing, but he's like, this guy is so good. I'm going to create a spot for him and figure it out as I go. So there's just a testament to like, if you find the right people.
I didn't know you were responsible for that hire.
Come on, man.
Like that's exactly how I attribute that name is to Cosgrove. That's an awesome story. Yeah.
Yeah, because he filled in that org chart. Alan was obviously on the business side of things, and now he's got like a lead director of coaching. I don't know his exact title. Sorry, Craig, don't be mad. Or Alan. But, it's like, hey, if you got the right person, you find a spot for him, right? 100%. So kind of the inverse of this, because dude, you do so much like coaching, consulting, mentoring for other business owners. Have you ever had to work with a gym owner or business owner where their culture was just bad? And if so, do you have any like tips or advice for like writing that shit?
One person comes to mind where they were very quick to want to like get into what I would call the owner's box, right? They had only been coaching for, 4 or 5 years on their own, and they were a good coach, right?
Yep.
But they were wanting to get into the owner's box too fast. And they had young coaches that they weren't able to pay very well to begin with. They had an overly complicated system that made it even harder for those coaches to apply. And over time, that person moved on and kind of moved into a different segment of the industry. And I just remember working with them through that and just being like, man, like I know this is very kind of black and white in your mind of like how it should be, but you've got to take into account the staff that you have, their understanding of the application of this stuff, their bandwidth, like where their interests are too. Like you're expecting a 22-year-old kid to be as into this as you are. And that's kind of rare. They need like working alongside of him for a longer period of time. I think it would have essentially like he could have cloned himself to a degree. And then it would have been more of a reflection of his team or of his beliefs as a whole. And I think that would have been better overall for the culture.
Right.
I've been doing this 25 years, but it was like 11 years of me doing this, 12 years, maybe even more, before like I ever unplugged myself at all. So that meant like anytime we brought in a new coach, they worked side by side with me for a really long time. Yep. I was paying payroll hours on things that, I probably shouldn't have been paying payroll hours on. I just didn't know how to do it in any other way. Like I didn't know how to teach what I know. I could have bullet pointed out a system, but I'm not so sure that communicates the nuance. So I just bolted somebody on to me and paid them for it. And then eventually when I felt that they were pretty good, it's like, I'll try it out. Well, now when I go to a seminar or an event, like you run the show. And then when I come back, I'd see how it went. And over time, it's funny, like they would talk like me, walk like me. And that was really beneficial. And I just think today, everybody has this very like business owner focus to grow in a gym. That's why me and Luka talk so much about like the coaching first approach. Like what has really worked for us is like actually being coaches and caring about coaching before we became owners, right? It was like, we're going to be really good at the coaching side of this. That'll attract the right people into our universe who align with us. Then we can start moving up and teaching people what to do. Whereas like now the common advice that I hear, what dominates the industry is like, we're wanting to fast forward people into that ownership like position. And I can give you a list of like we just talked about, like clear on your goals, identify your values, hire for the right person in the right seat, like read any business book. And that's what it's going to tell you to do. But that's not always easy in application, you know, and I'm not so sure that's a linear path to onboarding a team that's reflective of your values and culture.
Okay, here's like a corollary that I think you will agree with. So you and I both have interests in marketing, right? Copywriting, that sort of thing. I'm sure you've spent plenty of hours reading copywriting. Now, I'll never be a world-class copywriter, but I've read enough copy to know what good and bad copywriting looks like.
Yes.
So therefore, if I go to hire a copywriter, I know what I need to get out of it, right? You see where I'm going with this? It's
Yes.
the same thing. If you've only been coaching for 3 years, you don't even know what good or bad coaching looks like. So when you go to hire a coach, you can't distinguish whether that person is good or bad. And that's where I think, hey, taking those 8 to 10 years of being a really good coach first, nobody wants to hear that, right?
No.
Nobody wants to hear dedicate a decade of your life to being a great coach first, and then start to level yourself up into like the ownership game. But that's kind of like what it takes, right? Like you think about, and again, maybe it's not exactly a decade, but myself, Andy McCloy, Luka, Eric Cressy, Tony Gentilcore, like a lot of these people that I know have had success over the years, they've coached for a long time, and then they moved more into the business ownership side of it. It's really interesting to think about it like that.
No, it is. And I think so. That's like step one, like, because then you know what good coaching looks like. But to what you just said about copywriting, like, dude, I was going to like John Carlton seminars, 12, 13
That's
years
an
ago.
OG right there.
He's the OG in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I've noticed this now with like kind of the paid advertisement world. Like we weren't running paid ads for quite some time. And here recently we've got back into it, and we work with a great company, and they do a great job of like building this stuff out for you. But if I didn't know how to like read it and like audit it, it could not be congruent with the message of how we talk and how we communicate. Yes. And we live in this like copy and paste world now where people are just too willing to outsource every aspect of their business without making sure they're competent at that skill set and that it really resonates with the culture of their business, whether that's sales, marketing, social media. So I think you've got to really know what you stand for. You've got to have a baseline level of competence at a ton of skills before you start becoming just the owner of a gym,
Yeah. Okay. So I got to follow up to something you said earlier. You talked about how you basically bolted these young coaches onto you, right? And it took you a long time to kind of unplug. What did that look like? How did you get out of that situation, and how did you start to take steps back to where, hey, there isn't just this, Andy versus everybody kind of org chart. It's like, no, hey, like if I'm going to really grow this thing, I need to detach and let some of these people kind of grow into their own space.
Well, I mean, it started kind of with what I explained first. It was like whenever I would go out of town, I would give these people an opportunity, and then I would get an idea from like the clients themselves, how well they did. And then I would love to say that I had like a 4-step process to like remove myself, but I've openly shared this is like, I probably did it too abruptly in the beginning. It was like, okay, I've earned my way out of working 5 a.m. every day. So the minute that I found somebody, I unplugged myself from that and let somebody else run it and then kind of manage the attrition. Like, well, how well is it going? I might expect a little bit of attrition, but it shouldn't be a mass exodus.
Yes.
And luckily, even though it was kind of done abruptly, that's what happened. We didn't lose a lot of people. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, they can do this.
Yep.
It also checked this box in my head of like my overinflated self-importance. Like everybody's going to leave if I don't do all the work, right?
Yes.
So I kind of proved to myself that like, okay, somebody can do this job. And then I did the same thing with like my 7 p.m.s and 8 p.m.s. So it was like I bookended my days, which allowed me to sleep more, rest more, think more, and then start to figure out how to grow the company. But for me, it was like, these are the two hardest things, the early mornings and the late nights. I've got to start getting myself out of some of that. Find the right person, bolt them onto you, stress test it by way of going out of town for mastermind events and education seminars, get feedback from the clients, and then have the courage to make change and evaluate how it goes. That's what worked for me. I did not do the same thing for weekends for a very long time. I just always felt that it was too valuable to have a Saturday session. We have a Sunday session now, but I never had one when I was kind of doing everything on my own. But unless I was out of town, I was going to work the weekends because I would sell in the morning and then I would train from like noon to 2 or noon to 3. So I didn't have a lot of time. That's one of the things gym owners struggle with is like, how do I sell? And it's like, well, I just did sales on Saturday mornings, every Saturday morning from like 8 a.m. to 11 or 8 a.m. to 12. So it allowed me to kind of segment things. Like in the morning, I'm selling. And then from 11 to noon on, I'm coaching. And that was just a valuable thing. And the sales is kind of one of the last things I removed myself from Until I had a staff member that like had heard me do it enough. We had talked about it enough, got them a lot of training on how to do it. And then just, again, had the courage to like unplug myself and see how it goes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk employees, because I think this is a nice segue here. I would love to just start with, what are the qualities you look for? What are the consistent qualities that you find in great employees?
So I could give you the value speech all over again, but I'll just give you one piece. Like one of our company values is Kaizen, which is constant and never-ending improvement. And it's not just like in the job. I mean, as a human, like, are you the type of person that is always wanting to get better? Do you have a growth mindset? Like, that's to me the most important skill set above all. Okay. The second would be personal leadership. Are you the type of person that does what you say you're going to do? My training director, he's just a Roger that dude. If he says he's going to do it, he's going to do it.
Yep.
I've told a story before. We had a gym flood years ago. And he was up there at 4:00 in the morning one day before 5 a.m. sessions, just making sure that everything was the way it should be, because he was concerned about, showing up and being underwater.
Yeah,
right? So
sure.
Just that was what he felt was required to do his job well. That's good personal leadership. He cares about the experience. That wasn't a part of like our checklist of how to do your job. Like, he's just the right type of person.
Yeah.
So I think that Kaizen and personal leadership, those are two big things. And again, the term growth mindset probably resonates with more people than the term Kaizen. But are you willing, if I say, hey man, like, I think like you can only make so much money as a coach. Like, we have margins here based on our pricing and how we sell things. If you want to make more money, we've got to develop skills that allow you to make a bigger impact on the business. If a coach is like, I just want to coach people. I mean, you can certainly make a living doing that, but it's going to be harder to get to kind of the top level of income and impact with that mentality. Yeah. I'm looking for people that are like, I'll learn how to do lead follow-up. I'll learn how to sell. I'll learn how to create content. I'll learn how to go out and kind of meet coaches, network with them, make offers of how we can do joint ventures. I'm looking for that type of person, not somebody that just kind of wants to be in the gym all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. I know there's probably people listening who like that's their idea of their career, but just specifically in my business, there's a place for those people. There's just not a lot of upward mobility for those people in a micro gym.
No. There's just a really strong ceiling there, because there's only so much you're going to get from just killer coaching and referrals. And I'm never going to tell you that that's bad, right? No. Like, being a killer coach and getting referrals is great. But if you're trying to build really a one-of-a-kind gym and you want that kind of continuous growth, there's a ceiling there, right? Because you need those co-ops, right? You need to be able to go in and create those JV partnerships. You need to be able to run classes and events and those sorts of things, because those are just like really wide nets that turn into front-end offers. Yes. Right? You go run the speed camp for 20 kids and people just think, oh yeah, that was nice to make that $5,000. Okay, maybe. But how many of those kids can then you flip into full-time clients? Yes. And people, like sometimes the average coach doesn't think of it like that. So one of the things that I was writing down there, the 3 things that we used to always look for, right? Like, these were my core qualities. Number 1, hardworking, right? I think that's just kind of status quo. If you're going to be a coach, you got to work hard. Number 2, you have to be curious. So there's your Kaizen. And then the third one for me was they got to have people skills. Yeah. Now, I'm really interested in this. Have you ever had somebody where, like, man, they want to be a coach, they love coaching, you're like, dog, you just don't have the juice with people. Have you ever had somebody like that, interacted with somebody like that along the way?
Yeah, one guy comes to mind who is, he was a good guy, and he was kind of in another industry at one point in time that was a little bit ancillary to ours. And I kind of had high expectations of him being able to come in. After he went through our internship, we kind of flushed out that like he was going to struggle with that side of things. Yeah. And if you can't do that in our industry, you're really going to struggle, right? Like, I think the first checkbox is like what Boyle says, like a Boyleism is like a CNP, a certified nice person. I kind of like changed that to like a certified good person, because I think there's some people that are nice, but they're not always, good people. But
Yes.
like after that, it's like, can you look somebody in the eyes, have a conversation with them, have a little bit of that like elevator speech talk in you?
Yes.
Can you kind of get out of your own head and ask questions instead of dominating conversation with clients, whether that's in between sets or at the end of the session or the beginning of a session? So I think if you don't have that ability, I don't care how good you are technically, you're going to struggle. And I don't think that our traditional education or certification system sets people up very well for that.
No. I love that. And I think you're absolutely right. It's like those weird, awkward times, right? Somebody's there 5 to 10 minutes early, right? Or maybe, they're, for some reason, it's a small group session, but now you've got them in a private, right? Like that's a true litmus test. Somebody that's used to a group session, now it's a private, right? And you have nothing in common with this person. Can you find a conversation piece to work with them? I'm reminded last year, I was running a speed camp. And so normally it's like 6 girls that are like Kendall's age, right? So they're jacking around and playing volleyball and doing whatever, 12 and 13-year-old girls do. And there was one time it was just me and one other girl, right? So me and this 13-year-old girl never really interacted outside of that, other than, hey, Liv, good game, whatever. So that was a hard session for me early on, right? Like so many questions, what are you into? What foods do you like to eat? Now I can tell you that girl loves grilled cheese, buttered noodles. She likes to shop, like that's what you have to do. And I'm not saying that was the best session ever, but it's like, that's what you have to be able to do is like kind of salvage those sessions, get to know those people. And then, hey man, now it's a memorable experience, right? Because I can talk about that. Like, hey, if I can have a conversation with a 13-year-old girl that I have nothing in common with, I feel pretty confident that I can go and do that with, most other human beings.
So it's so funny that you bring up that because literally last night, we interviewed somebody earlier in the day and I wanted to talk to Tate about it. So I went home for a minute. I came back and he was finishing up the 445 high school group, which had about 8 kids in it. At 6, we have a middle school group that comes in, which is usually like 6 to 12 kids, depending on the day.
Yep.
There was one kid warming up. He was on a foam roller.
Yep.
And I literally had a flashback to how challenging those days were for me when I was in that situation. A lot of times I was smoked. I had gotten so used to group coaching. I didn't want to have to do one-on-one coaching.
It's hard.
It's hard. Very hard. So I intentionally hung around a little while longer. And he did a great job. It's like awesome. He turned it into, and the advice I would give somebody is in those moments, you either got to fill the gaps with that small talk or you got to coach beginning to end.
Yeah,
that kid has to get a super high quality one-on-one session. And that came from my experience because if I was tired, I didn't have a lot of energy in me for the small talk. But I could still technically coach you minute to minute, and that's what I would do. And I think Tate specifically last night did a great job of blending both in that moment to the point where about halfway through the session, I felt like I didn't need to be there for moral support and I bounced.
You dipped. That's such a great point. Either you find out a ton about them, right? And you build those connections, right? And you build that rapport that you don't always normally get in a group session. Or like you said, I had another session like that a while back and it was just like, hey man, we just locked in on details. Yeah. All the stuff that might normally slip through the cracks in a, 4, 6, 8 person session. Hey, if it's just me and you, we're locked in. Yes. Right? All those little things that maybe we don't get to focus on normally, we're locked in on them now. What advice do you have to keep, because you got high performers, right? Not only in your gym, but the people you work with. What advice do you have to keep like your high performers or your highly motivated coaches focused and on the up and up?
Let's see. So instead of me just giving you a top of the head answer, it kind of circles back to this personal leadership thing. Like, are you continuously building the capacity to do this job at a really high level, whether that's as an owner or as a coach? I think a lot of things that stall progress are not having kind of like your next thing in front of you of like, what am I learning? What am I studying that kind of pulls you along? And then not taking care of yourself very well. Is that what you wrote down?
See that? Literally what's next, but go ahead, continue.
Yeah, it's like you have to have kind of like, what is the next thing that I'm working on that's pulling you along? And then I just think like our industry is notorious for like smashing bangs and reins and coffee,
Yes.
not sleeping well enough, bullying their way through things. And I mean, I know I got away with it in my 20s, but like that's not going to be as easy to do in your 30s and your 40s. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny because literally I was writing that down. I remember, when Bill and I are running the gym, and what do they call them in traction? Is it PDIs? Personal development interviews? Is that a traction thing?
I don't know if it's a traction thing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a little rusty on some of that language, but I like that.
I forget where I pulled it from, but instead of like a review, which nobody wants to do a review, right? Employees don't want to do it. I don't want to do it as an employer. I think we called them PDIs. I forget, personal development interviews. And that's where, hey man, this is how you're doing as a coach. These are things you're doing well. These are some things we'd love to tighten up in the future. This is our vision for you in the business. And I remember whenever we would do one of those, I did like 80% of it, 90% of it. Bill would do about 10 to 20. And that's not a knock on Bill. It was just like that was kind of our MO, and that's how we worked. And I always remember Bill would always ask when we were kind of done, he'd be like, so what's next? It's such a simple question, but all the dudes and all the ladies that we had in our gym that were forward thinking always had an answer.
Yeah.
Right? They always knew what was next. And before we'd even sit down, they were like, hey, I want to learn about this topic. Or, hey, I don't feel like I'm strong enough here. And so then it was so easy for us, right? It's not like us telling you, hey, your speed and agility game's kind of sloppy. You should go start to read up on Lee's stuff. They would come to us and they'd say, hey, I coach a lot of kids. I feel really confident in the weight room, but I need to get better at speed. I want to do some Lee stuff. And then it's easy, right? Because then it's us facilitating, right? And luckily, Lee's amazing. Hey, we're going to send you to this course with Lee, or we're going to buy you these resources from Lee. But just having that forward-thinking approach and constantly just kind of asking yourself, okay, what am I doing well? What do I need to get better at? And then having that action plan to get better, I think really shows you, which of your coaches are really switched on and trying to continue to level up.
Yes, I mean, every 90 days, all of our coaches have an education rock, and we want them to self-select that, right? Back to kind of like not removing people's autonomy and the rise of the knowledge worker. We want them to self-select, but I will feed them stuff all the time. And this is kind of like a sneaky tip that I think I've shared it before, but I know my team and I know what I selfishly want them to get good at that's aligned with their interests. I've been doing this a long time. I know the resources that can fast forward that process. So I will send them something. It could be, what's an example? I saw Stu McMillan had a really good post today, for example, about the oscillatory and undulation of the gait pattern and why that needs to be managed and how Dan Path had influenced him on that. I sent that to my entire team. I want to plant that seed in their head of like, hey, this is really important. Later on, I can suggest, hey, why don't we look at the Altus Speed mentorship program and feed them that. I'm always kind of foreshadowing those things for my team because when you're doing the job and you're doing it a lot, right? If you're coaching a lot of sessions, we talked a little bit about this before, very few people are as consumed with this stuff as the way we are. Yeah. But because we are consumed, we know it's out there. So I will feed them that stuff and put it in front of them. I sent might have been Travis Mash or somebody had a good VBT article with GymAware. It's a long article. I just sent that to Tate earlier today. I want to keep fast forwarding his understanding of those things. That way he doesn't have to go find it. I know where it's at, and I'll just keep putting it in front of him.
The ancillary benefit of that is that now your employees also know that you're always thinking about them.
That's good.
And you're truly invested in them, right? 100%. It's not like you're 90 days, hey, Tate, you need to get better at VBT. And then 90 days later, hey, Tate, did you get better at VBT? You know what I mean? Yeah. You're sending him stuff hey, I'm going to help you along with this. I'm thinking about you. I saw this article. That's something I do with clients, athletes. That's just a great little pro tip, right? It's so simple. You have a conversation with somebody and then you send them an article later, or hey, this is based off our discussion the other day. I think you'd like this. Right. And it's not sneaky. It's not manipulative. If you're genuine about it and you're thinking about them, hey, send that stuff to them because it just grows that bond and it just makes that bond even stronger. One other thing I want to talk about. Let's talk staff training, right? Because I know this is something you take a lot of pride in. What are you doing, right? Because people love to know what other gym owners are doing. What are you doing at BCI on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis to keep your team razor sharp?
Well, quarterly, like I said, they've got an education focus that's specific to their role, and that can be training or not. Like we've got one of our, like Chris Vermilia, he's going through a Go High level certification right now. Even though we outsource that to an agency that does a great job, and I don't ever intend on us owning that on our own. The more familiar he is with that product, the better he's going to be able to work with that agency. Okay. So we'll give them something quarterly based on their role. We're always talking about training. I'm always feeding them things. So like our current staff, it's like just keep that process going. But anybody that we're onboarding, one of the first things we do is we give them a kind of a blueprint onboarding document with a bunch of people that we respect, that we want them to go follow. You would be amazed at how many new coaches coming into this industry have no idea who some of the pillars in our community are. So we want to start pushing them in that direction. We have the majority of our coaches plugged into you and your education. But what we've also done is created an onboarding course based on what we do every day, who we are as a company, and what we do. They go through that week by week, and they are bookending meeting with Tate on Mondays and Fridays. And me and you've talked about this process before offline to help them refine it. And then weekly, kind of in the middle of the week, they're having to report back to us what they're learning. They're having to shoot videos. That way they're becoming more competent. And it's a rather new thing for us, to be honest. A lot of times it was just throwing people to the wolves and letting the training process refine you. But the bigger your company gets, you just can't rely on that. So we've got to have a multi-pronged approach to helping athletes or helping coaches in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does work, right? Like if you just got somebody bolted onto you, I love that term. I'm going to use that now. Yeah. Like if somebody's bolted onto you and tethered to you, 8, 10, 12 hours out of the day, just by sheer volume, they're going to get better and they're going to start to think like you and coach like you. But yeah, that's a great point because, when we started, we would have interns and, hey man, if I'm here at 5:45 to open, doggy, you're here with me at 5:45 to open, right? And like Nick, the intern, our first intern, literally that dude was there 5:45 a.m. to 7:15 p.m. when we closed. Yep. We just ground that dude down. So shout out to Nick for making it through that. But like you said, if you're not doing that forever, right, and you're trying to grow a real staff, right, in some levels to your org chart, it can't work like that forever. And that's where you have to tighten up those systems, those processes. It's just got to be more streamlined and congruent than just, hey, this is what we've done forever. Let's just keep doing it.
The cheat code is feed them all the people that have influenced you. Yep. Every DVD, I actually keep DVDs behind me kind of for nostalgia purposes, right? Yep. I still have VHSs, but it's plug them into everything that has influenced you from an external perspective. But what we realized is we needed to start creating internal IP. It's our voice teaching them things.
I love that.
And we're going to continue to do that. Our onboarding is pretty strong. We're going to keep making it better. But I love what you do with your mentorship program. And we're building something very similar to that specifically for BCI coaches.
Yeah, I love it, man. Well, Andy, I know you got a lot going on. Really appreciate your time. Before I let you go, would you tell everybody that's listening where they can find out more about you, all the cool stuff you're doing, the mentorship, everything. So please share.
Yeah, in regards just to connect, I'm probably hanging out on IG the most. Just, be patient with me if I don't get back to you. I'm actually really trying to do less and less of social media, to be honest. But
sure.
Andy McCloy _BCI is the best way to find me on IG. Our business mentorship program that me and Luka Hocevar run is called Built to Last Gym. You can go to builttolastgym.com. Or, like I said, we're both very responsive on Instagram. Those are the best ways to find me. And if you want to just see kind of what we're doing at BCI, get a little bit of insight, our Instagram there is ran by a company that we hire, but they do a great job of reflecting who our clients are and what we do and a little bit of inside information or a little inside look of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's just BCI Sport Performance and Fitness on IG.
Love it. Love it. So if you're listening and you want to learn more about Andy, all the great stuff he's doing, make sure to check out the show notes. I'll put live links in there. And yeah, I can't say this strongly enough, but if you're a gym owner or thinking about getting into that game, definitely check out what him and Luka are doing because it is truly first class. So Andy, again, my friend, thank you so much for coming on, brother. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. It was great.